Tony and Glenn,
Yep. And with the noisers, Mike and Ian.
There we go.
and the unstoppable Angie. I think I
Our
stopped
MIDI
her.
buddies, the noisers.
That's right. We are here on Edge Fight tonight to talk some IT with Glenn and Tony. Are you guys ready? I can't hear
Yeah.
you. Are you guys ready?
Ready?
Let's talk
Ready.
some IT.
I'm always ready to talk shit.
Assimilate.
Much better. There we go.
So we've been exploring, like, different MIDI controllers, ways to get guitars into MIDI signals, basses. Dallas has that toy, which is, I think, a great option.
Absolutely. That sounded pretty good straight out of the box. $150.
Yeah.
What was the name of that?
It took them what, 5 minutes?
Yeah.
5 minutes to plug in.
What was its name?
Yeah.
I think it was a Boss MIDI pedal. I'm not sure of the exact model, but we can find out from him in a minute.
Oh, cool.
It was a blue MIDI pedal with 4 options on it.
Let's
See if I can figure out which one that was.
Now, could you just like take your natural bass sound and shift it up an octave, or you still have to go through a MIDI bass at that point? You're adding different sounds, right?
Well, once you are going in MIDI, you can easily transpose whatever you are playing an octave up, a fifth up, a third. The beauty with MIDI is you can transpose it on the fly.
Yeah, we have an octave up button just right there. Be able to just play a chord and then drop it up an octave.
Nice.
You can adjust it after the fact
There's
as well.
your fifth string, Ian. There's your fifth string.
Yeah.
Play an octave higher, drop it lower.
True. Wow.
Yeah, that would be your fifth string.
And that's a lot cheaper than a Fedora, isn't it?
Yep.
Yes.
Might not sound exactly the same. The timbre might not be exactly the same, but it should work.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great option. $150. Not bad. I wonder what it sounds like with a fretless, though, on the higher end. Can it really grab all those infinite notes in between?
That's what I was wondering too. That's what I was wondering too. Because I would like to get a fretless.
Yeah, it would have to use like the glissando thing or whatever that pitch wheel kind of thing is integrated somehow, right? To get the bends.
That's one way you can modify. That's the way you can do it on the keyboard.
Right.
You can use the pitch wheel to bend them up.
Yeah, so when you bend your string, I bet you'll get the same, kind of flavor, right?
You should. The question is
what
again,
I'm curious
how
is
discreet
what it would
is.
read. Yeah, when you're hitting like that middle area where normally there would be a fret, what I'm curious is how the MIDI how accurate it would be in picking up those mid tones. That could
how many discrete slices there are between notes.
Yeah, I bet you it's tempered like a keyboard, where you're not going to get those in between those semitones.
Probably not as smoothly.
Yeah, because MIDI does read in notes, so like it might still see it as a note, but it turns it into a B flat or a B sharp.
Yeah.
I would picture a slide as a glissando, like you mentioned. Like if you hit the C and then you hit a C an octave higher with glissando turned on, it'll slide all the way up from one to the other smoothly. But that's an effect that you would enable, before hitting them, not something you would look at after. But you probably can do it either way.
Yeah, I'd have to try it, see if it works with a melodic style, if it's natural sounding. I'd be definitely interested. What I like it these days is, I don't know about you, but you get a new toy or a new sound, a new guitar or something, and it inspires you to sort of write that next song or some aspect,
Exactly. You see
it's
where
Yeah, we were talking
inspirational.
about that a couple of weeks ago, like how a new toy can inspire a new album. Jason was going through all his presets on his effects processor, and I was like, damn, he was basically just writing songs on the fly as he was just playing with the presets.
Wow.
Because each
Okay.
song
Remember-
or each sound evokes a different sound of a different song for you.
Yeah,
I remember
definitely.
hearing Lennon say when he first got the wah wah pedal, it was on every track for like a month. It was like everywhere.
The new
Playing
toy.
around it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those
Well,
effects, like the ones that like make you start like flangers and wah-wahs, they're so addictive when you first start playing with them that you want to put them on like every song. But it's a tough effect to actually continuously use.
yeah,
They're specialty effects,
right. That's the thing is,
but you can
if
have a
you
lot of fun
overuse
with
them.
them.
Yeah. I found this guitar setting that was in my NI software that I used on my most recent song in a sort of a bridge in the middle. And it is one of the most stunning guitar sounds I've ever heard in my life. I use it with the pitch wheel, and it sounds, I don't know, like Eddie Van Halen and more. It's just ridiculous that a
Nice.
keyboard player could get that sound.
Proper use of the pitch wheel there is huge, because that's where you'll get those guitar expressions.
And it helps to play the guitar
That's
because
just
you
it.
think
Any
like the
keyboardist
guitarist.
trying to simulate a guitar. Yeah, any keyboardist trying to simulate a guitar has to like play with the mod wheel and the pitch wheel in order to accomplish what guitars do so easily.
My favorite keyboard player is in this style will be Jan Hammer. Do you remember him? He was the keyboard player in Mahavishnu, and he would keep up and sometimes blow McLaughlin off the stage. And all he had was a modified Fender Rhodes, I think it was at the time. They didn't even have all the fancy synths in the early 70s. No, probably mid 70s at that point. And
those Rhodes were awesome though. You could do a lot.
But you remember how
with
we got
them.
a pitch bend? You ever hear it? The live session, Mahavishnu live? It is truly outrageous. Jan Hammer is one of the finest improvising. He also showed up on those Jeff Beck albums, remember? The yeah, and he can move that thing and use a pitch bend wheel like nobody's business. He's awesome keyboard player. And the other guy, Patrick Moraz. You ever hear Patrick Moraz's first solo album?
No.
Jaw-dropping. 1975. Yeah, before he joined Yes.
Nice.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, amazing.
You're talking about the keyboardist for Yes?
Yeah, he was one of them.
Now I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, Moraz. Yeah, there's a solo album that he put together, and I think he's from Switzerland or somewhere, and he was mostly a soundtrack guy, and he got dragged into rock and roll, and he put out this solo album, and then got picked up by Yes.
Didn't they have Rick Wakeman? I thought they had Rick Wakeman.
Oh yeah, they did, and then he moved over to Moody Blues, I think. Just a hired hand, but he has an amazing sense of how to use a pitch bend. He can make a keyboard like talk.
Yeah, Fagan was doing a lot of that with his soloing on on the albums that he did after the band split up. He worked that pitch wheel and that sort of high end flute horn kind of sound thing. Yeah, it's a skill for sure. Yeah.
Well, Mike, on our song Blunt, right, which Angie played last time, it's a slow groove, but that entire solo.
Pretty smooth segue, dude, from Fagan.
Thank you.
Keep going, man.
Well, forget about him. It's about me.
I remember Blunt.
Yeah. And that whole solo is basically, it's a Fender Rhodes sound, use that with the pitch wheel. And the first thing I thought of when I heard that sound, when you think of inspiration, was Jan Hammer, only Jan Hammer like with the tape at half the speed. That's me. Basically, I try to get the same sound that he does, and the same kind of phrasing. And but my fingers don't move as fast as his. That was the
I think
inspiration.
Jan did Miami Vice, I think,
Correct.
or right?
Yes,
And did he
he's a
do
producer.
he did the classic Chun Chun on on all that, Law and Order stuff, I think. Chun Chun, that thing.
Yeah.
I think that was Jan.
Oh yeah, he became a mainstream, behind the scenes. He's got to make money, right? So
he's not the one who did Axel F, is he? Did he also do Axel F?
I don't
Not
know.
sure.
I'd
Am I
have to
thinking
look that
somebody
up.
else?
What I knew about him. He's a famous guy. He's legendary. That he came from like Czechoslovakia, and when he came over to Berklee School of Music, he entered as a drummer and came out a keyboard player. And within 1 year after he left the school, he didn't complete the 4 years. He was playing with Mahavishnu 1 year out of school. Ridiculously
Picked up some
talented.
skills.
Yeah, he is an advanced musician, to say the least. But then he got into production and other things. You can only do that thing, I think, for so long. But he did a big thing with Jeff Beck, and they would trade riffs off back and forth with all the pitch wheel stuff. It was outrageous.
Nice.
That's kind of stuff
awesome.
I like.
When you get a keyboardist, when you get a keyboardist and a guitarist that are really like fluid with each other, that's always a great compliment. Some of those 70s and early 80s bands that were like breaking new ground with synthesizers as they were being developed, some of those keyboardists could keep right up with the guitarist.
I got another one for you. You remember Billy Cobham's first album, Spectrum?
Of course, I have it.
Of course. Well, we lived by that album.
Well, yeah, you only listen to stuff that but yeah, that guy's a maniac.
I think we're older than Tony and Glenn. That's our problem. They have no idea what we're talking about.
I don't know. I'm pretty old.
We're feeling pretty old.
I'm making you feel. No, it's Spectrum. Billy Cobham's first solo album, and it starts off with what sounds like a guitar, but it's Jan Hammer playing, and he just slides through the keys, and then Billy Cobham just does. He kicks them in, and the song starts off. It's one of the most outrageous examples of guitar and synth together, just like what you're talking about.
Right.
I'll have to look it up. Have you heard it, Glenn?
I have not. I don't recognize it. No, it's possible that I've heard it. I just don't recognize the actual track.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I never heard Jan. All I heard was because that guy was just like, he was a steamroller, Billy Cobham. Yeah. He used to practice underwater. He practiced underwater.
True story.
Really?
Nice.
He's a machine.
That's an interesting way to build
a jazz
up the
version of John
muscle.
Bonham.
It is, yeah.
I saw him in on Boylston Street in Boston, and I was sitting about 6 feet from his kick drum. It was a small club, and I was down in front, and he just walked onto the stage. He just counted the thing off. I think one of the Brecker brothers was on horn, and it was phenomenal. The amount of sound that man produces from a drum set. It's probably why I have tinnitus now, Tony, from gigs like that. But he whacked the hell out of those things.
I'd like to think that I had
It's
a
a miracle.
part to play in that.
That hasn't happened to me yet.
I pray that it doesn't. I have ringing in my ears 24/7.
That's not good.
My brother, my brother was an Air Force engineer, and the plugs that they used to give him, he's dealing with that. Ironically, I was the metalhead in the family, sitting next to giant speakers, and my ears are still working.
It's a strange thing.
I figured I would
they don't understand it at all. The first time I heard about it was Pete Townshend was the most famous guy. And then I think the drummer in Aerosmith, he had it really bad. There's different levels that you can get it at. I think
I'm not surprised. Drummers, I would imagine, like with drummers, is likely a common problem when you're hearing like those splashes and those loud cymbals on a regular basis.
What we would do
Add ear
naturally
protection.
as a drummer, what you
Limitation.
naturally do is you turn your head and you damage one ear and you save the other one. Really, my right ear is like crash cymbal gone, but my left ear
That's true.
has
When you see
some hope.
drummers, they do tend, yeah.
It's a natural response, and but yeah, sorry about that 120 dB cymbal crash, Ian. All those years, man.
It was your fault, but I can't sue you until you make some money. Then
I'm learning to take responsibility.
Slowly but surely, right?
Yeah, another 10
Very,
years maybe.
very slowly, very slowly.
Yeah, but I picked that up, tinnitus, about I think it was 3 years ago. But it's an odd thing about it. It's different for everybody, but it was triggered for me by I had to have some dental work done, and I had to really open up my jaw without the gory details.
They mucked about with your nerves.
You started noticing it?
Two things. TMJ, if you know what that is, with your facial muscles and your jaw, right? If you have too much tension, some people have TMJ, so they have to learn how to relax their jaws. I've never had that problem, but from this dental experience, it was like an extraction and some other bad stuff. And it was open for too long. And then after that, the third level, I believe, was taking ibuprofen. Drugs trigger tinnitus. So years of sound abuse, and then those two things. And by the way, we had seen our friend who was playing in Foreigner. He had given me tickets, and we went down to Mohegan Sun, and I saw that a month before that, and my ears rang like the old days for 24 hours, and it went away. But that was like a loud rock show, and I forgot to bring my earplugs. It was a big mistake. And then I had the dental experience, the ibuprofen, and then one morning I woke up, and you're sort of like, what the hell is that? And then you start to freak out.
How have you adjusted when you're making your music? Do you notice it when you're when you're making sound? Does the ringing go away, or do you just like try to blank it out?
Here's the strangest thing about it. It's not a real ringing. The best the scientists can figure out is that your brain actually produces sound based on what it thinks it's hearing from those little hairs in your ear and the cochlea, right? So their theory is that some of the little hairs are burnt out and missing or damaged, and your mind is getting like a false signal. So it thinks that it's producing that pitch.
It's just like
but
phantom
it's not
pain.
really there.
Like if a limb is removed, people feel pain in that hand still, but same kind of thing.
Good analogy. And so your brain is doing that. And I get it's a decent subject, I think, because a lot of musicians and a lot of younger guys, they're playing gaming since they're little kids. They've got the headphones cranked up with loud noise, not just music. And it's a timely subject.
Oh, people should be more concerned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh God,
young people these
days
should be more concerned about their hearing, especially when you're listening to digital music. Digital music in itself is kind of messing up our ears. Since the 90s, anybody born since then only knows music through digital, which is not the same as what we used to listen to through analog. And if you haven't noticed over the last 20, 25 years, I know my ears, digital is sharp to me. Digital has a sound to me that I've picked up over the last 20, 25 years. You hear the compression, you hear what's getting lost in music, that same CDs and tapes that I used to listen to in the 80s and 90s, listening to them now, I hear a significant difference in the music. Because my ears are changing. My hearing is changing because of digital.
Do you think the digital, is it
I think it's
damaging
because of
your ears?
MP3 compression.
Is it damaging or just changing?
No, I think what's happening with MP3 compression is a lot like JPEGs and other lossy compressions where they try to substitute things to make the file smaller. And the brain tries to compensate when you're listening to like the MP3s that we used to listen to back in the 90s, and especially at the low bit rates. Our brains do some compensation for that missing sound that's not there. And over time, I think between the brain and the ears, how digital sounds to us, we're not listening with our full ears anymore because of the
Interesting.
compression sometimes.
Interesting theory, Tony. I hear differences.
Especially if you spend a long time listening to MP3 Walkmans with them in your ears loud, and you're hearing this compressed music that's actually missing some of its frequencies and trying to duplicate them as it plays it back.
Right. And I think you're right. The engineers purposely, just like I said with the tinnitus, your brain is what actually produces the sound, right? And it gets it from a sensor, which are those little hairs. And I think that the MP3s and the sound engineers, they trick our mind, like you say, to fill out the track and the loudness, right? That it may not technically be louder or fuller, but they found ways with compression, I guess.
But in your head, it feels like it.
Tony's talking about something really interesting also, I think, anyway, if I may, which is like when you play a piano, like an acoustic piano, there's an infinite number of vibration interactions. Okay.
Harmonic frequencies, yeah.
Yeah, right. And they had to definitely, with RISC chips, and they couldn't capture all that stuff digitally, especially at the beginning. And so I remember Sony got nailed for this, but these early compressions, I don't know, maybe the 320 Mbps is okay now with MP3, but the early compressions, there was a loss in that that harmonic
the 192s
area. Yeah. And they had this, they sort of like laid a curve on top, and they somehow they lost the main of it, but they captured some of it. And it's noticeable, I think, over when you listen back to things like Tony's saying, like, wow, imagine listening to, all the crappy MP3 files my daughter copied in the 90s or whatever, or they're just the high end is just awful, and there's just, anyway, huge loss.
And sometimes you crank it up just to compensate for it, but that's not good. Like, turning it up doesn't actually help for
there's
what
something
you're
else
losing
about hearing loss, because it's like if you turn a light on, like when the sun comes up, the light comes up gradually and your eye can adjust to it. But if you take a strobe light and you hit somebody with a strobe light, it's shocking to the eye because the eye is fully open and it doesn't have time to react and close properly, like to close down so you can get to the sound level. And staccato instruments like drums don't give the ear a chance to close up either. It takes the first 5 minutes of like damage.
That's a good
and then
analogy.
Finally, your ear finally says, I've had enough. I'm closing up now. But it's a little late. It's a little bit late, Yeah.
That's right. That's why, as the day goes on, right, our ears change when we're mixing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It gets awful at night, man. Mixing at night. After mixing all day, you're right.
And
it's not good.
This is really a reminder that listening is not just an ear thing. It is a brain thing. The way the brain uses what you're listening to and perceives it, either side of that could screw things up. You could have the best functioning ears if your brain isn't using those ears properly, or vice versa. If your ears aren't working good and your brain's trying to compensate for it.
Yeah, trying to normalize, if you will.
You really want to keep that. You want to keep them both. Yeah, you want to keep them both balanced to have like good listening. If you're sitting there for 10 hours a day in a studio, like pounding the way I've been for the last couple of years, I've noticed, I mean, for me, my listening has gotten sharper. Like now, after 2 years of engineering, I'm hearing things I never heard before. And isolating sounds. But on the flip side, there's could be some listening damage that I might not be noticing yet.
For me, it wasn't so much the damage as ear fatigue or even brain fatigue or whatever. When you're trying to mix a song, if you just sit there and you're going over the same thing over and over, adding an effect, taking it out, like tweak little things here and there, you lose what you're doing, or you lose sight of what you were trying to do at the beginning because you're just going so far down.
That happens all the time to me.
Yes.
So I have to just make minimal changes.
Yeah, you know, a 10-hour session.
Come back and listen some more. Step away. Come back and listen some more. Do it that way.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I agree.
I have a really.
I've been really doing. I've been doing the next morning test a lot lately. You know, not publishing when I'm done at the end of the night. Been doing it for 10 hours. I'm gonna get up and take one last listen before I push it up. Yeah. And I am noticing, a slight difference there.
Oh, it's very true. Absolutely. I hear things differently. And then, it's like you said, there's what's in your brain, but it's just like when we take a mix, you run out to your car, you play it on those speakers, you play it on your iPhone. I don't know if you do, but I play it on different devices.
And you get totally different results.
Yeah.
Right. And then, you know, and you're already beaten down saying, should those strings be that loud, right?
Yeah.
And then you
want to find what's the happy medium that sounds good everywhere, but doesn't sound anything too out of place everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Exactly.
The more I get into mixing, the more frustrated I am with it. The higher my expectation, and then it's like something I can just never attain, that perfect mix. It was easier when I was a pure musician and the guys in the booth just played.
Mixes are surrendered, never finished.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Love it.
You work on it so long, and then it's just okay. Here it is. This is as much as I'm going to do with it right now. I might revisit it in a few months, but for now, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And it's just like writing the parts. You know, like being happy with a mix is as much of a challenge as being happy with the parts and the arrangement and all the other things that we do to make a song.
Yep.
The same thing with web development.
Strangely, I'm easier to please. Yeah, I'm easier to please mixing than I am arranging and writing. I've spent decades trying to arrange and write a song. Mixing, I can usually find a sweet spot in 5-6 hours. I usually hit my mixing sweet spot.
That's why Mike and I are moving up to your house, Tony. We're going to put together a
mixing and mastering company.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I'll play the parts. We're
going because of Mohegan's son, man. We're going to gamble. We're not doing any of that stuff, man.
No, Tony lives up on the border, Mike.
He's way up there now.
Yeah, he's in Canada.
I'm up in Maine now.
He had to start saying "a."
Mohegan was my old stomping ground.
That's good. I wanted to also draw just a quick analogy to web development, because when you develop web pages and stuff, you have to handle 3 different operating systems, 3 different devices, responsive design.
Multiple
I'm just
browsers.
underscoring what Glenn said, which is that happy middle. You have to find a middle place somewhere that it's working on all these devices. You know, it's a new challenge for sure.
Yeah, because you're trying not to take advantage of features that are only in this browser or only in this operating system, because it needs to be cross-compatible. So you have to dumb everything down to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, there has to be an intersection between all those diagrams. Yeah.
Could you imagine if your mixing tools limited like what instruments you could play with, or what tracks you could use? If your mixing tools like said, you're only going to be able to use this many tracks, so you've got to slice out all the rest of them.
With one of the
what happens
tracks.
with BandLab if you're 16 tracks?
Not even the 16 track limitation.
Not enough.
But somebody was doing tracks on their phone and added some effects that were, I guess, beta effects on their phone. So when I went into it on the PC, it told me that I couldn't touch those tracks. They were frozen because I would have to go into the mobile to do anything with them.
I have a potential. I may have an answer for this. It may or may not be that grayed out track area, but here's what I discovered recently on BandLab on the phone, yada yada, which is I did custom effects because I saw all these great effects and started playing around with the effects, right? And when I made my own custom effect, when Ian made a revision, that effect transferred. But when I modified their presets in my revision, when he made his revision copy, they did not transfer. So I had to save them. I had to do a save as and make new names for the effects for the tracks, so that when now I own them, or the software, that session
software
owns
considers
them
new, yeah.
Right, yeah, and then they transfer. That was a hard lesson to learn.
Oh, yeah, it's
pain in the neck.
Just for the record,
the
guys.
BandLab editor, do any of you know, on a BandLab editor, is there a way to bounce a track with the effect so that you basically duplicate it and now the effect is part of the track?
Yes.
Can you duplicate the track and say put the effect into the duplicate without having to
the effect I
add
believe
it again?
transfers into it transfers to now I work a lot on the phone, so I had my own limitations about, or my own view of BandLab as I'm trying to work with it. So what I have to do, it's kind of funny anyway. Another big mistake I made was, because I'm on the phone, I would download a session or download something, move it to a new project, and I'd get like a crappy little M4V file of like, a tenth the size of a WAV file, right? But if I go into the mobile BandLab from the phone, not the app, I have more functionality, and I can download stems in high, like in 44.1 uncompressed, with or without
WAV options.
mastering.
Yeah.
Yeah, with or without mastering.
That's all I pull down.
And that's going in the browser.
If I pull down any tracks from BandLab, I always pull
and
it
that's
WAV.
That's the phone's browser, not the phone app. It's anyway, another way in.
Yeah.
Now, on a regular, on a computer browser with BandLab, you can always right-click over the track and export as WAV.
Yes.
That's what I used to do.
Right.
Before this Cakewalk integration, that was the approach I took. And so I still do it because in some cases it's faster than downloading it from Cakewalk.
Yeah, I told you can't.
It's
you can't
awesome,
get
their integration, but it's very slow.
I was telling you can't get MIDI files from BandLab, and he's like, just right click, and I'm like, I don't have right click on the phone.
Yes, yes, on the phone you can't, but on the PC browser you can right click and export the MIDI.
Yeah, right.
It's the only way to get MIDI out of them. I wish they would incorporate better MIDI support, because I really do want to be able to interact with the MIDI.
I'm sure they'll improve. Yeah, they'll improve.
The one was to try to take, track one and add all the effects that you want on it, but then have a way of piping track one to track two, because then you could add more effects.
I know, and merge and all that other stuff we've been doing for 20 years. Yeah,
see if they could put it in, but
they got work to do.
Some work, yeah.
Well, I bet you that this is on their to-do list. I mean, they are trying to get that online editor as close as they can to Cakewalk. The last couple of months, what I've seen in the online editor is aligning features as much as they can. There's going to be some limitations, and the effects is the big one. Having effects on the mobile and different effects on the PC browser, and Cakewalk doesn't even use any of those effects. This is the confusing part of moving stems around. You got somebody who's laying a track down on a phone, uses this. The next person's doing it on the PC, is using that. And then somebody mixing it might be taking it all down to Cakewalk. You want all that stuff to move across all three of those without like having to like get wet tracks that you can no longer turn off that effect.
Right. Or else maybe agree that everything should be dry.
At that point, you have to be happy with what you have. I would prefer it. The best thing to do is like add the effects and things during the mix and the mastering at the end.
Yeah.
Right.
Record nice dry tracks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll give you.
It's
I'm on
non-destructive
record.
when you do it that way.
But you can
That's
download
why
them
it's
without
preferred.
effect. You can download the stems. I think you can download. You can turn effects off on the download. Yeah. But there's nothing better. I gotta say.
Matter of fact, when you use
to sing,
when
singing
you
on the
use the
phone is
project
so great.
downloader, the project downloader on Cakewalk gives you the option to download the mixed track and the dry track. So you can literally download two versions of every track. One will have the effects, one will be the dry track. That is a time saver.
That is nice.
That's cool.
And what's great about the phone, I gotta just give it up for the phone for a moment. As to singing is like really like touchy feely, like it's never good enough, all that stuff, right? But there's a comfort level to putting effects on, putting on your headphones, singing on the phone, and not having to be any particular place. You can kind of be, a little freer, I guess.
Sitting in the park.
Yeah.
Thinking like
Wherever the mood strikes.
like whatever singers think like, if they think, like that, something like that. Somewhere.
Singers.
And a lot of times singers go to obscure places just to do their tracks. I know several who will go sing in their car or someplace where they can actually get some quiet so they can lay down their tracks. So that is where the mobile helps them to like not piss off the family.
Well, like you said, you get used to also,
or get pissed off by the family.
We get used to our sound area, so you're comfortable in your studio. But I remember when I went to Editel Studios or Longview Farms or other studios, it's like all of a sudden you don't know the room, and that's a lot. That throws the singer off, kind of, can throw you off a little bit, And anyway, so this phone stuff is pretty cool. The iPhone mic is not bad. I mean, forgive me.
No, the iPhone has a good mic.
Yeah, I'm using it, and
even the 9s.
It's sacrilege, My SM58 is crying in the corner.
Tony, well, we have this fun dynamic though. Mike and I have, as you know, known each other for a long, long time, and done live gigs, studio work, all kinds of things. And I'm on record. The way my process works is I absolutely hate the phone.
Same here.
I
don't even like it as a phone these days.
It's a miracle.
An awful phone.
It's a miracle that it works, and BandLab is a miracle that it's all over the planet. So somebody in India, they only own a phone. They're suddenly up there competing with producers, right? It's brilliant. I love it, but in the position that I'm in, where I'm trying to pull things into Logic, I'm trying to match tracks up, align them. I'll give you a couple examples. I deal with a guitar player up there sometimes, and he records on the phone, and I'm a freak about BPM. If it doesn't lock and load down at the bottom,
same here.
I'm not moving forward. I'm not using Flex. That's it. I would rather quit music than if we can't agree on BPM. So we start there. So my friend, who's a great guitar player, he's recording his guitar through like Bluetooth, and there's like a latency thing going on. This happened last year. And I bring it into GarageBand before I have my fancy Logic analyzer. And I'm like, what the F? This is not like 131. It's not like BPM 132. It's something like in between. And I'm like blasting them with these DMs like, what the hell are you doing? I mean, that's not like even possible, right? And he's just like, I don't know, man. And finally, I pulled it out of him. He's like, oh, yeah, well, my cable broke and I'm on the Bluetooth. And that latency transmitted into the BPM. And then you get more collaborators, some on phones, some not. And it became a you-know-what show to the point.
And isn't it funny how, like, he might not think that's a big deal, but like you noticed it. And it is a big deal. Like, hey, if you're changing how you're recording your track, and I'm trying to work with this track if I notice something's weird and I'm asking you, like, what's different about what you did here versus before you were on time and your track was aligned and now it's not. And if they're going to be in denial, like, oh, I didn't change anything, oh, but yes, I am using a Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Boom. Like, yes, Bluetooth will always add latency. Always. It's
Yeah.
not it's not a
Yeah.
technology that was made for this kind of audio. Like, it's good for like headphones for you to listen to your music coming
Yeah.
off your phone wirelessly, but it's not a musician's technology at all. Any stage setup, any Bluetooth that you see in any performance technology is there as a convenience to spit audio off to a speaker or something where
Right.
latency doesn't matter. No musician is going to use Bluetooth to, like, I want to hit this and I want my sound to go somewheres wirelessly. They're not going to use Bluetooth. They're going to use radio because
Right.
That
it's
was
the
one where
only
even
wireless technology that can keep up.
those drumsticks that we looked at that were drumsticks that you can use. You don't have to have a drum. You don't have
Yeah.
to hit anything. You're just using the drumsticks, and they acknowledge where they should hit things and where the drums should be. But the first set was Bluetooth and had a really bad latency issue with them. The second set, they were using a PlayStation 3 camera and reflectors on the end of the sticks and on your feet, so that you could get the kick pedals and the sticks. But
you
wouldn't
guys
really
would
get
have loved
any
this.
noise. It was very cool.
I want that for
Like,
Christmas.
guy was just
Get
playing
me that for Christmas.
air drums.
Yep, it was
Just
called
playing air drums.
Aeroband
Wow.
drums, I think is what it was called. But there was
But
one
you
that
know, the
was like
solution,
black sticks
the
that were
blue.
Bluetooth, and then
Wow.
the other one with the reflective sticks that were with the camera. That's the one that you would want.
The solution on the phone for Bluetooth is pretty simple. It's a $10 gadget you buy for the Thunderbolt, and you plug your headset into the phone, and you don't have any latency. You wire in.
Yeah.
But what I've done
Would have been nice if they just kept the damn jack in.
I know.
I get why they took the jack
God.
out, because they want to make them skinnier. But don't make me buy a $30 adapter so that my lightning port can turn into an analog port that should have been there in the first place.
That's why
This
well,
is just like making me
but, you know,
buy
with-
crap.
Ian is on the grid so much, and I can't stand the grid anymore. So I've gone completely free range. I won't be on the grid.
Tell them what the grid is.
Up. Well, the grid is the BPMs.
It's
you know,
not easy to get away from the grid.
So I just put stuff up now
yeah.
in the wrong tempo and the wrong key, and I go, Matt, Ian, play like a human. So I yelled. I'm sorry.
You broke up. Human.
Human.
And that is the beauty. And we talked about this last time, Tony, the influence of digital, right, in every aspect.
Yeah, like quantizing.
But now, if we're doing more and stuff online with BandLab and what have you, we're not in a room rehearsing anymore. Like that key change problem I had with Carlos, that's 5 minutes at most in a room with musicians.
That's the kind of thing you would have smoothed out. Yeah, you would have smoothed it out as you were sitting there, like working on the song, rather than like lay down all the tracks and say, now let's do a key change.
Yeah, well, I can do key changes in Logic by myself very easily. I do it all the time. But when you got to communicate with somebody, they're on totally different kinds of equipment. And BandLab is just the cloud, the intermediary. But back to the grid, as I call it, this is the wonderful fine line of the way I see it. Rhythm and the bass of all songs, it's bass and drums down on the bottom. Now, the drummer is the guy that cares most about BPM, always has. Bass player is the next guy that should be aware of it. And he connects to the guitar player and the keyboard player. And then finally, the singer is like a cloud floating over the planet, right? And that's fun.
Yeah,
that's
singer can sing in whatever fucking tempo he wants.
Exactly.
As long as it sounds good.
Tempo?
And at the end of the day, he goes home with the girls. I mean, he's the boss, okay? But the drums and the bass have to lay down that track and that consistency. And for what that translates to now is the digital world, the grid. And so for me, BPM is like, is the holy gospel. It is where you start and begin. Now you can move in.
The death of all music if you end the same tempo. Death.
Death.
And
Mike and I talk about this all the time, where you look at classic songs that we love, like Honky Tonk Woman, right? Mike can tell you about how Charlie Watts brings it up. He brings it back down. And the tempo, if you analyze that in Logic, that thing looks like a roller coaster. And it's moving music.
It's
it
beautiful.
is,
Yeah, beautiful.
and it's a beautiful thing. But here's the thing: in today's world,
So you've been using that logic analyzer to analyze your tempos? Because one thing I noticed with Cakewalk when I try to do it on mine, I'd never play in a consistent tempo. If I take one of my
none of us ever do. We
tracks that I
don't.
just
We
played
don't.
and I drop it into the tempo, I'll go from like 120 to 121 to
Yeah, man. Yeah,
120.5,
yeah.
119.5.
Yes.
it's human,
Yeah.
and that's normal. You
Yeah.
see, people forget that dynamics is a simple thing because you can hear loud and soft, right? And a lot of people, it eludes them. The power of dynamics is the fifth level of music. It's the icing on the cake. It is what communicates, whether it's an orchestra or the Who, soft to loud. But rhythm is the same way. It's another element of dynamics. And we're losing that with the grid because, especially in electronic music, which about half of my release is on that side now, is everybody just 120 or 125, the Avicii setting, right? And they just let the damn thing run through. It's supposed to. But you take all the humanity out of it. It is stripped down if everything is just locked to that grid. And of course, as we're plunking MIDI down and everything's quantized, that's why it feels like, at times, in the wrong hands, it could feel like a soulless mess, right?
Which is 100 miles. Songs.
Well, depending on depending on what you're dealing with, sometimes you have like a swing. For instance, Groove Agent or some of these AI drummers.
Yes.
You'll have like a swing option where you can give it that human adjustment just a little bit or a whole bunch, and then it will kind of float a little bit. But if you keep it pure digital, and then it's like precision tempo.
We're now getting into my specialty. So the phrasing, that thing it used to be called human error. They used to add error, like just like make it off a little bit. So, and then they started doing that nice thing with the swing and the, to kind of get a phrase going. But that phrase is only a phrase that lasts for, say, one measure, 4 beats or 8 beats. So when I studied timpani and phrasing there are many phrases in the music. There are phrases that go on, for the whole verse and then the chorus, and then there's micro phrases in the moment. And we're definitely not on the grid when it comes to playing the drums, or it would be without dynamics, it would be lifeless. So there's a counting methodology to bring phrasing to rhythm.
You know how people bitch about like the sound of MIDI?
Yeah.
A lot of times, like say MIDI drums, if you just go grab one and it's a lazy MIDI programmer, all the drum hits are at 127. No levels. They're just constant, constant hit. Even the amateur ear hears that there's no dynamics in it. You don't have to know anything about sound. You listen to a track like that and it's flat. Like everything's just flat at that dynamics. You kind of have to like go in and put the dynamics in, so that way like a human doesn't always hit the snare at the same volume. Sometimes it's a little harder, a little softer.
And there's also this space between the notes on the micro level. So I'll be real brief with this and say that I can't be brief. So anyway, Philadelphia Orchestra, John Krell, Kincadiana is the book. It's the Bible of phrasing, and it is by a flautist who with dynamics. So the counting method is that you can't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, or it's stiff. So the whole game is simply this: you double the number. You go like 1, 2, 3, 4, and when you double the number, you add a slight gap, and then you rush the other notes toward the end of the phrase, and it creates life. And I'm talking
kind of forcing yourself, forcing yourself out of that.
It's not forced at all, because first of all, there's 110 people playing at one time in an orchestra. So if we don't have a phrasing agreement among all the orchestra players, no one is going to be on. So they have to take it to a higher level. But the idea of phrasing, and you said it well, when it feels right, that's happening. When it feels good, there are these little micro pauses and rushes. Even the seventh note is a little sharp, leading to tonic. There's all kinds of bends that happen. This is why I'm so anti-grid until there's an actual drum program called the Phrase Maker that we can actually experiment with phrasing over 8, 4, 8, 16, and how that would lay out. Then
I'd be curious if your
the
opinion
MIDI
of drum monkey.
the MIDI robots can join me.
Mm-hmm. The drum monkey was one of the ones that generates drum patterns for you, but it tries to make them more human and less automated. But I'd be curious
Love
if your
to know the
opinions on
algorithm. Drum monkeys. I'll look into it. I love anytime somebody says monkey, I just get happy. I love that word. It's a funny word.
Yeah, this does look like an interesting AI.
It's basically
It looks like
you
an
hit a button
interesting
and it
AI.
just
Nice, simple
generates it for you.
approach.
So it gives you examples of different phrasing, like you're sampling beats, and then you pick one that you like, and I get.
Yeah, you're telling it like a style and an approximate
now,
speed
but
or
now,
whatever, and it just
do the other MIDI guys, do the other MIDI players, are they hooked into the same phrase as the monkey?
They would be. You'd be building the track from the monkey up. Like you'd be using that as your bass for the drum track, and then add the bass to that, and add the guitar.
Yeah, but when you're adding the bass, is the bass following the type of phrasing that the monkey's doing, or is the bass just doing its own thing?
Yeah, the bass. Basically, I would take the drum monkey and set that down as the drum track. And I mean, I don't have it personally, but if I did, that's what I would do, and then play bass along to that, because it's basically just a drum track at that point that you just locked into.
Yeah, but I mean, does the micro phrasing? I'm saying, like, if suppose I took the drum monkey and then played a keyboard part, would the keyboard part match the phrasing of the drum monkey?
If you played the keyboard part,
only if you played it.
If I hit the
only if you played it.
If I hit the quantization button, if I hit the monkey quantization button.
Oh yes,
yeah.
It should. Yes,
you could do that because the drum monkey's producing a MIDI drum, so and it is going to produce a like grid MIDI drum. So if you go do a keyboard track afterwards and then decide like you want to quantize it so it just snaps perfectly, then anything that you were off a little bit, it'll slide that note to the hit.
I want it to be off. No, but I want it to be off. I want it to follow the drum monkey.
Me personally, I wouldn't run quantize. I wouldn't
You're
want
saying
to
that
run quantizing on the track I add.
The drum monkey's already off a little bit, causing a phrase, right? And I'm just.
Well, what I'm saying is
the
the drum monkey is just basically putting in an entire drum track. Mm-hmm. And you can tell
that drum monkey does have some
I tell you, I doubt it translates to the other MIDI instruments. The micro phrase.
It'd be worth checking out. It'd be worth checking out.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah. That's great. That's awesome.
Well, with the drum AIs, like where you can slide is usually on fills or part changes. So it might stay, because it is a drum AI, it might stay in a like consistent tempo unless you tell it to change a beat or two forward or backwards. It would stay in its consistent tempo, but it could have rolls that have some human articulation to them. You bring that swing up, and then all of a sudden that roll could be all sorts of slightly sloppy, but it'll hit on the hit afterwards where it's supposed to.
Yeah, not definitely not what I'm looking for, but yeah, interesting stuff.
Drum monkey, we gotta look it up.
Drum monkey, yeah.
It's a good way for somebody to get a beat, like for something that it's better than working with a metronome. That's the attitude I would take, is like, I can either try to do this to a metronome, or I can find a beat that's close to where I want to start, work out what I really want to work out. And if I'm not happy with the drums that Drum Monkey or Groove Agent do, fortunately now I know tons of drummers on BandLab, and they tend to be able to add their drum tracks after the fact.
Yeah, that blows me away too.
It's not like the old days where I would have wanted them to lay down their track before I lay down mine.
Yep. With GarageBand, one of you guys was bigger on GarageBand. I was working with the drummers in GarageBand, where you could select, Andy, the drummer, and he's got his 8 different grooves that you can pick from, and you can, add the amount of fills you want. You can make it more complex or quieter or louder. Or
yeah.
all that stuff. Sweet. I always liked messing with those because they didn't sound as robotic as if you were just programming drums in. It seemed like they did have some more humanness to them.
They're giving the profile some style.
Yeah.
What they also
fucks up once in a while, but it sounds cool.
They might be actual drummers playing phrases, and then they put them into MIDI, so the phrase is captured.
And then they have a slider for the fills, so they can go. If you go all the way to the maximum on fills, then the whole thing is just
right. I've seen that. That's a nice interface. That circle slider. That's
I like that.
Sweet.
Yeah. And so that was where I would take a start from.
All these drum AIs. Yeah, all these drum AIs are definitely using MIDI because it's the only way to like collect up different styles and be able to flip them, speed them up, slow them down. MIDI's the only way to get that stuff done. There is no alternative. Can't do that in like sample drum loops. I will not work with sampled drum loops unless I have no other option, because a wave of a drum loop is not the same as a MIDI loop of the same beat. A MIDI loop, I can separate every hit into its own track and say, boom, there's my hi-hat on its own track. There's my bass on its own track. Can't do that with the wave file.
That was one of those scripts, wasn't it? That they had for separating.
You can't clean up.
Cal scripts, I think they were.
Superior claims they can do it. I don't know.
Well, and Superior's all MIDI based. Everything Superior's doing is based off of MIDI loops.
They claim they can hear a wave file and then separate the tracks and make the drum tracks for you in MIDI. But I haven't.
Oh, you mean analyze a drum beat and turn it into a MIDI file? Yeah, there's a couple of approaches to that.
It's a claim,
Basically, even in Cakewalk, there's one called Drum Replacer that kind of takes that approach where you teach it what the drum you want to isolate sounds like, and then it will go through that wave file and convert that into a MIDI hit, and then teach it the bass drum. Boom, go through the wave file. Here's the bass hits, and it'll find each part that you teach it and build you a MIDI version. That's how that technology approaches it. You have to teach it. You have to show it what the drum instrument that you want it to isolate.
It's interesting. It's great that non-drummers like Ian, for instance, can leverage the Anders.
He called you a non-drummer.
That's a compliment.
Well, no, I'm about to say.
Hey, I'm not one either.
But I mean, they do a really nice job with like putting tracks together and bringing the AI. But here's the greatest story I've ever heard. I'm studying with the timpanist for the Met Opera, and he plays a 17-stroke roll. It takes a second, and it sounds so good. And I'm like, what do you like? Why did your roll sound so much better than 17 notes in a second? So it's right. It's like that, right?
Yep.
And he goes, well, Mike, he goes, between the 8th and the 9th note, I cause a slight delay. and then I rush the rest of the notes to the downbeat
to separate them.
Right. And so he plays it. He drops it 2 octaves on a tape recorder, so I could analyze it. And it went ba 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 ba. And I went, oh my God.
That is what he did.
Oh my God.
Once you can actually, once it clicks.
It's like a baseball player watching a ball and it's in slow motion. I mean, the micro phrasing is just that humans can only do is extraordinary.
At that point, he's basically doing 4 pairs. So, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then jump into that to the rest of the way out.
Yeah, the roll,
the rest of the way out stuff, though.
It takes a second to play the roll. So for him to be able to manipulate that and hear it, it's pure mastery. And,
he's done that more than once, for sure.
He played with the Eugene Ormandy in the Philadelphia Orchestra for 13 years. The guy was a monster, monster
humanoid.
And And praising is what you learn when you go to college. You're not playing rock and roll anymore in high school band, Ian. You're playing. Hey. You're playing
Still
with
playing rock and roll now.
You're playing with lesbians, and never mind. I'll stop.
Hey, you're getting cut them off.
But yeah.
Let's go back.
Monkey, the monkey's on my mind, man. That's cool.
The drum monkey.
Yeah.
So, Mike, can I talk about me now?
I just have to say 2 more monkey things. I feel a monkey in my soul, and didn't Lennon have a monkey on his back at one point? Okay, anyway.
Everybody's got something to hide except for my
yeah.
That's Paul, dude.
Nah, that's Lennon, bro.
Paul.
Lennon.
Oh, speaking of, have you guys caught that new documentary?
I'm still
Netflix
reviewing
has this, or
McCartney.
Amazon
McCartney
has this
321.
6-hour documentary on their last album. Jason's been showing it to me the last couple of nights. I really want to watch it now. It's the last album that they made.
I hear it's great. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great.
I'm gonna try to binge that this weekend.
Yeah, that's very cool. All this mini
stuff.
Ian.
Go ahead, Ian. Right. Talk about you, man. Go ahead.
All right, mute his mic for a while. So I put together
I'm gonna go cook some.
And you got to give him the wand.
So I put together a song, and it's on the lab right now. It's the newest one. It's called Machine Learning. So what I did was I started off and I was writing.
Can you guys bring it up?
Maybe Ange could play it. She's the wizard with. And so what we're talking about here with phrasing is the concept is that how there's easy drums, easy keys. Well, soon we're going to be just feeding parameters into a bot, into a machine, and it's going to arrange and produce the song for us, right? So 5 years away. So I said,
well, for some people, some musicians will never be happy enough letting something else do it for them. Some musicians want to play their instruments. Some of them want to write their words. You can go to Lyric Maker and it'll produce some words for you, but that's not the same thing as writing them.
And we may not be happy with it, but I'm just saying the technology, the AI is going to get better and better at this. And we all dream about what will music sound like in 10 or 20 years or further. So what I did was I wrote the song, and then I put it, I used the MIDI, and I started off where the computers are talking to each other because the AI is deciding how they're going to arrange the song. And I start with 1980s MIDI, and it sounds really mechanical and on beat. So that's like the introduction. Then it drops down into a verse. And so each verse, I tighten it up. So the machine is learning from the parts that I put in there. And you got to kind of hear it. I have a horn line in there.
Now that's where things can get interesting.
Yeah.
I would be cool with my computer learning my style and then using what it's learned to complement my style. As a musician, I would be okay with using technology that way. I wouldn't want to have technology substitute for my piano playing.
And so this song
is able to do it, but if it learns from it,
this is that balance.
Some usefulness.
So imagine Elon's got that chip in your head, right? Already. And so we think we're controlling the chip, but what if it's the other way around? And what if it's an interplay? So this song is about that, where I let them learn the song up to a point. Then I have this radical bridge where I have this MIDI guitar, which is mind-blowing. And it drops off the grid into, it's almost odd meter. And that's my intervention. And then the band comes back in and tightens up. And then they talk about what they've learned at the end of the song. So this concept of
I love the concept.
There it is.
It's so
I have
cool.
a feeling Ange is waiting for the cue there. She's amazing. Look at it on the screen, please.
Oh, thank you, Ange. That little cymbal play in the middle there was a nice mood breather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had to put that one in by hand because that section gets way off the grid. So I had to play the drums with the finger drums.
Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah. When you were doing those ride bumps there, you did those by hand, like tapped them, or actually played the cymbal.
No, I have no cymbals or
Tapped them,
anything.
yeah.
I did it on the keyboard.
I can understand.
Mm-hmm.
I would tap them too. I don't think I could program. What you were doing there needed to be natural. You wouldn't want it to be mechanical because it wouldn't have sounded the same. It was a human breather part in it.
It drops into a radically different minor key, and then I'm not sure. Mike could probably analyze it. I know he could analyze it better than me. I just felt that part and I played it, but you see, I use a lot of the Logic drummers, which is the GarageBand drummer that you were talking about, Glenn. And when this, you can't have, the drummer can't play this because unless it's all in, zeros and ones that line up on the grid, the guy, he doesn't know what to play.
You could use them for like the beginning section and the end section and then fitted whatever in the middle. But yeah, he would not be good for the whole thing.
That's right. And so
didn't you delay him at the beginning too? You kind of pulled the Anders back a little bit.
So what I do is I set up different drum tracks, and in Logic you have the ability to make the drummer play behind the beat or on the beat or ahead of the beat, right?
Is that like a button? You have a quick way to do that without sliding?
It's a dial. And so I can, how like James Taylor or something, the drummer might pull back to be in the pocket. He might be purposely a little behind the beat, and the bass player may push a little head or lock with him, one way or the other. That's what creates the groove, really, right? So Logic breaks that out for you. You can dial in the amount of behind or before, the ghost notes, and even control the hi-hat for the open and closed within their automation. And so what I did was I want them to be, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, this is where you've seen MIDI sequencers and technology really evolve over the last 30 years. These are now the tricks to rehumanize a track.
Exactly.
20, 30 years ago, this technique was not a dial. And you could do it, but you'd have to actually go in and do it mathematically. A lot of work. So now these are the ways to give it the human element.
And I think I talked about this last time with Mike's and I, the Opus tracks that we did. He gave me the shell of a lot of electronic stuff, and then I would feed in a lot of analog bass parts and things, but also I use the Logic drummers in ways maybe that other people don't use, because you can get them to follow. You can check that box. Glenn probably seen that in GarageBand, and you can choose a track, right? That it is guiding it. So usually,
the drummer actually follows a track that you specify.
Yes, and
or
normally
you play and it follows you.
Ian lays down he has an interesting way of doing this. He lays down a bass. Is it a bass track, Max? That Ian, that you have a reference drummer follow?
I call it
something
a phantom track, Tony. So once I know that where I want his kick drum to play, I manipulate his groove. It triggers from the bass player mostly, and I'm a bass player, and so you put down the dominant rhythms that you want. They don't even have to be the right notes of the song, but you set up the groove and the rhythm and the flow and the phrasing, and then you tell the drummer to follow that track. Now,
they're watching the transients. Yeah.
I can mute that
so like
track.
telling the bassist to follow the drummer.
It's
or the
the other way
guitarist
around.
To follow the drummer.
The AI drummer is following me. And then I mute that track in many cases. And then I play the real bass part that I'm going to play against what he's playing. And then I take it and then I have it follow the actual bass part that I do.
That's a really cool approach.
So I've been doing that for 2 years. So I'm already dancing with AI, and the drummer's almost as good as Mike. That, you know, I mean, let's not go there.
And I like your thinking there.
I used to have a job.
You're thinking in the
Buddy Rich said it
workflow.
Yeah. It's a process, but it got one step weirder on this one. Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. In that with this song, I wanted to actually get in there and mess with it more than that, because the bots are supposed to be learning as they go. So I set up the drummers, different sections are on different tracks. So when it first starts, the guy's playing behind the beat because he's learning the song. The drummer is.
So were the other ones following additional tracks? Did it progressively learn from the ones
or they start
kept
following
adding?
later?
No, I didn't stack the learning up. That's a pretty good idea, but you can imagine the possibilities in your mind.
Hey, I would try that.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
You'd almost do like a round, think of it like a MIDI round approach by doing that, like a round, but with AI learning.
Yeah, and so you
this
dance
track
with,
follows that track,
right? And you can do other things in there, and I haven't gone this far yet. In about 2 years, I'll be completely insane. You can take guitar tracks.
I'll be there
and you
with
can
you.
Designate. You will be. You can designate certain tracks as dominant tracks. This is separate than what the drummer is doing, and you can call that the groove track, and then tell which instruments you want to be influenced. So it again could all come down to the bass player, who of course is the most important player in the band, right, Glenn?
So and affect certain tracks by the groove.
Right.
You could actually affect certain tracks specifically by a groove dial.
Exactly. And with the luxury of sitting here in front of, you can't do this live. You can't get the other guys to follow or do, but in your perfect little laboratory in Logic, for a 3-minute song or 5 minutes, you can break the song up into all different sections and apply the different techniques to pull the groove back, to push it forward. Infinite possibilities.
Very cool.
I'll tell you, there are some people who do that live. DJs.
Yeah.
Some of this is what the secret to DJs who can actually like suck up this and suck up that, merge them in beats by strategic choice. A little fancy work there, and there's a whole new song going with a beat that people are dancing to. DJs are really skilled at doing that on the fly.
So Ian, are you saying that you could start a song at say 120 and then tell it to end at 123 and have a slow speed up throughout the entire song and still be on the grid for other people to add contributions around the world?
No, that's where it gets nasty. And Mike, as usual, you're telegraphing my next move, which is I'm going to do an entire series.
Do that?
I'm reading from a script, and you know that. Okay,
oh, good man. We're going to.
It's like me.
Is I want to take this bot idea, because I've been using it. Now I'm going to actually build it into the process. So the songs that I'm writing, the next one's going to be kind of like a jazzy thing. And so the bots are going to learn jazz. That's my next thing. Now that's easier said than done. And
that's where the staggered AI learning might come in handy. Jazz is the perfect place to say, hey, you learn from this one, you learn from that one, and so on.
And it could go round and round, infinite possibilities. But yeah, I'm excited about it. And the audience, unfortunately, might just say, oh my God, that doesn't sound like music. I may go too far, but it's like a guide for me.
If you want to write the next kind of music, you might have to might have to do something that some people might say you're not making music, but if that's what you're doing, you might be making the next kind of music.
And I agree. And Mike hit on one thing that is my next challenge. Is we started by saying that dynamics are in volume, but also in the rhythm. I'm going to start using now in Logic.
All over the place.
I'm going to start getting
attacks,
into the
releases.
tempo. right? There's a tempo track there, and you can change, you could push your chorus up, say from 101 to 102, and then bring it back down. And then you can also put in a gradient increase, a measured increase, like the way you put in animation.
Sure.
So that the tempo slowly speeds up and you move to an outro that might be faster. You want to build tension through phrasing, volume, and possibly the speed using AI and MIDI, strangely enough, to emulate what real players like Leland Sklar, one of the greatest bass players of session work, right? The reason he's always hired is because he's got almost an AI running through his head. Guys, Cool Hand Luke on stage, a bomb could go off, the groove doesn't change. He can pull it back, he pushes it forward. James Taylor turns around and it's always right because he's guiding the ship. Now that was a master, but now we're in the digital age, so we're crafting in the computer to emulate some of that thinking. So I'm going to start using, but there's a huge glitch and a problem here, guys.
We're actually utilizing we have the same needs that we always had, because in the analog days, if you had a reel and you slowed it down or sped it up a little bit during verses and choruses, that's how you could take the recording that you got from this band, get it all where you wanted to, and just get that little dynamic impact with just a quick little nudge, and let's speed the verse up a smidge, because
Wow.
you know, sometimes a tempo that you're recording at it feels right as you're doing it, but when you're listening back later, you start to realize like, ooh, I'm almost a little too slow there. Yeah, sluggish. In the old days, you would adjust the speed of it, you know, like a projector that goes a little faster or a little slower. Now we are doing the same things in digital, but we have to do it different ways, but it's for the same kinds of reasons. We're still looking for these kinds of dynamics.
And I agree with that. But the beauty here is if you put your finger on the tape machine, it changed the pitch with the tempo.
Yes.
But now
you had to be real careful.
Yeah, exactly. So Keith Richards' guitar on Honky Tonk Woman, if they did that, say, it would push him up out of tune or a semitone up, right? Like George Martin with Strawberry Fields, they have that semitone thing in there, right?
And this is something back then you would have done it on the final mix. You wouldn't have done it. I mean, you might have done it to an individual track if you're trying to do something weird with like a guitar effect, but more likely you're doing it on the final mix where, hey, the whole band's got the sound and we just need to make it sound commercial.
Yes.
Tempo.
And we
commercial
used to be able
tempo
to play,
wants to be a little faster.
We used to play out and, you know, you play the song 2-3 months and you find the sweet spot, you know, and we don't have that today, you know. We're trying to find that sweet spot from the building from the bottom up, but I'm so concerned about losing my job from Ian here that I've surrendered, and I'm getting an Apple and Pro Logic so I can at least try to keep up.
The machines are taking me over.
Getting on the same page at least. Yeah.
And Michael, that segues beautifully into, in parallel with what I'm doing with this, Mike is releasing, they're really his songs. We call it the Pop series. So I don't know if Angie can hear us there, but he has this beautiful song out right now. I'm on it a little bit. I have something to do with it, but it's mostly him. And it's called, what is it called, Mike? Introduce your song. Sail.
Introduce yourself.
Sail with me, man. Sail with me. It's about
Sail with me.
Grabbing your partner and slow dancing. It's a ballad.
Yes.
Sit back and turn on the
and you are the best. Look at her go.
Oh, I think this is Glenn who's
is Glenn doing
helping us here. He's eagle eyes, eagle ears.
Tack toward the sun We're escaping from the shoreline, and if the wind is blowing strong, then we'll sail forevermore. We'll leave the world behind us. We'll let the ocean guide us. Come sail with me. Tack toward the sun till we reach our new horizon. And if you feel like I feel, then we'll sail forevermore. We'll wash away our sorrow. We'll sail right through tomorrow. Come sail with me. We'll leave the world behind us. We'll leave the world behind us. We'll let the ocean guide us. We'll sail right through tomorrow. We'll wash away our sorrow. Come sail with me. Sail with me. Tack toward the sun. Tack toward the sun. Tack toward the sun.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, gorgeous.
And sailing has actually always been very close to my heart. We always had a tiny little sunfish sailboat when I was a kid, but I loved the water since I was tiny. So I used to swim around and go sailing and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's a great place to write poetry. It's thank you, and thank you, gentlemen. Thanks.
And it completely felt the mood of like just floating along on a beautiful sunny like morning. The
I float a
vocal
lot
work
in my
was
life.
incredible.
And tack towards the sun. I like that. Very cool.
So Mike, how did you
there's
record that
some-
song?
yeah.
You sang
yeah.
each of those vocal tracks, Mike?
Yeah, this was really this was a chore because we had a version of this that wasn't as good, but we liked the lead vocal and I wanted to keep it. But back then I was playing around with keys and tempo. So the only versions I had were the piano at one tempo and the vocal at a slightly faster tempo, which was really fun. So we decided to like chop it up and kind of like make it work. And then I was thinking as we were doing that,
it worked very well.
It's much freer than me being so on the beat, because it's like it's off a little bit. It's like a singer, you know. I'm like, wow, this actually sounds good.
And in a human way,
yeah, in a human way, yeah, like a human.
And the second vocal track was more like a breeze. The way you were singing the second track was more like the breeze melody, and it really reminded me of like good old air supply. I almost thought like that could be two voices.
And you're talking about the lead vocal or the backups, like the ahs and the oohs, or I'm not sure what you're talking about, but
yeah, well, the lead track, like when it comes in, like after the first like 30 seconds, and the change in vocals there, I was just like, whoa. And then the way you were blending the two vocal tracks going to the end, like Air Supply used to do that. They had two great Sticks used to do it too. You know, they had two great singers that sounded great together, and those parts kind of felt like one was the wind and the other one was like the poet on the boat singing the main
one had
melody.
more of a wash to it. And I got that actually from something Ian was working on, interestingly. But just to finish off this thing, all of that, other than the lead vocal, which was recorded in Pro Tools in 24-bit, so it was a quality on an SM58 probably. So it was a good track.
Vocals sounded awesome.
All the mixing and all the other parts, other than the brilliant soloing that Ian did, was done on the iPhone in BandLab.
Nice.
True.
So those vocals were recorded in BandLab, and I couldn't believe it myself that they would even, you know,
BandLab is a good recorder.
Yeah,
it's all about the mic. BandLab is just like Cakewalk in the sense that it is a DAW. It will record what you put into it. You should be aware that the signals are always a little hotter. Any mic you're plugging into the BandLab DAW is always going to be hotter than if you were plugging it into Cakewalk or Logic. Equipment connects better with the computer DAWs, and you tend to start with a pretty nice signal. You don't really have to mess with it too much. With the BandLab, especially the phone mics, people should pull their mics back like 10-15% from
when you make the recording,
because they almost always come in hot.
I put on the beats and I connect them directly to the phone, and then on the track you can monitor your voice, and then you can hear it. So you all of a sudden it's really nice and big, and you try to, in fact, you have to pull back and you can watch the levels. But Ian decided this song.
When you're looking at your levels, how do you adjust when you're looking at the levels as you're using that mic? You obviously either move back or closer to the mic.
Yeah, it's the same way a singer does
levels, right?
It's the same idea that you're pulling back, and you're trying not to phase it left and right. You're trying just to pull back, but there are times when I'm trying to get high notes.
You should stay consistent in front of the mic.
Yeah.
Unless your purpose is to actually sound like you're moving.
Well, I'm straining on the high notes is all I can say. So I'm trying to hit those notes, and I'm definitely pulling back and trying to find the right place. Ian thought the song should be in 3/4. Thank you. So he redid everything too. And the way I got the at the end where I layered the lead vocal was directly from something that Ian and I were working on in the 3/4 version of the song, because he felt it was like a 1-2. He felt it was like a 6/8 feel. I'm like, well, okay, cool, you know. So thanks. We're having a blast doing this stuff. Yeah,
excellent.
It's beautiful.
You guys are maturing with your use of the tools too. That's the best part.
Yeah,
as time goes on.
Yeah, as the body decays, you sit in your chair, you pick up a phone. Exactly.
Well, Well, Mike, we were talking about the groove. What about
As
the
long as
drums
my
on-
body can play.
What about the drums on that track?
Oh yeah, they were putting in on the Roland, and then that's the Roland kit sound. So that's and I believe I'm on the Quant, dude. I'm on the Quant.
You don't have to admit that.
I mean, but it's a loose Quant. Gives me a little freedom. It's a good Quant. And but when I put the track up in BandLab, I screwed everything up, and the tempo was at 160, and who knows where the key was. So it wasn't on the grid, but it was also pre-recorded at a tempo that was on the grid. So gridless
It might
grid.
be noted that a certain musician blew a fuse because it was not on the grid.
That would make
at
sense.
A royal effing hissy and still
Human.
can't get over it.
Human. I will.
I had a
learn-
four-part horn section for
I
that
will learn
break.
this damn Logic software. I will learn it, and I will be off while I'm on the grid.
I know. I trust you, dude. In fact, you'll be showing me how to use Logic in about a month, I think.
No, I'm going to speed up and slow down and let Logic just keep the tempo, and we got Human.
Luckily, I can.
Now,
I
are
can
you
edit
running?
that.
Are you running Logic on the Mac side too, or are you running it on the PC side?
We went Mac. We went Mac. Yeah.
We're all Apple.
Yeah, man.
Total Mac between
Yeah.
each.
Yeah, we've got.
Well,
I've got
that's
machines
useful when you're
everywhere.
moving files back and forth.
Yeah.
If everybody's
got-
on the same software,
We've got
things move a lot
DAWs
cleaner.
coming out of our ears. We got DAWs. Jesus.
Yeah.
DAWs for days.
Who let out the DAWs? Well, it started with Mike. We've been pretty much Apple technology, but he was using a lot of the phone, even in that Opus series, which is amazing. And then he would ship it up to me one way or the other. I would get those files and then load them into GarageBand. So it was still Apple to Apple, apples to apples. And then
most of it worked. Not everything transferred. They're not quite compatible, but
well, GarageBand does not transfer in most directions. If it's not going to Logic or Pro Tools, GarageBand makes no sense in any other direction.
Apple is making a promise that their new M1 Max Pro will handle everything from tablet to desktop to phone seamlessly. That's their promise.
Yeah, Apple's been making promises since the beginning, and I haven't drank that Kool-Aid. I mean, hey, if somebody wants to buy me one, I would never say no, I don't want a Mac, but I'm not going to go spend my money on it. I've had bosses who have bought me Macs in the past. As a programmer, you kind of need them.
Well, yeah,
nothing else testing.
No, they're great. They rewrote their kernel in Unix 10 years ago, and as a web developer, I have to have Unix, Mac, OS. I have to have phone. I have to have PC. I've got to have all the operating. Yeah. I've got computers all over this place.
You got to test them all.
Yeah.
Yep. Hey,
Same. That's what helps
you
make
see
you
the
well-rounded.
back.
Yeah. My job does help out the technology side, but there's so much to learn, guys, because things are moving at lightning speed, and tomorrow they'll have something new out that we'll, just know about. I got to get my monkey drummer on, man. Like that. Right?
Definitely. That's what I should do. I should try to find.
Well, if you do, definitely come back and let us know your experience with the monkey drummer. I mean, we've been curious about it since Glenn showed me, and I definitely like to see the stuff in action.
I just saw it come up.
And I think Ange is close to pumpkin time.
Oh,
that surprised me.
Yeah, you're very inspiring, guys. We always appreciate talking with you.
You guys are inspiring, man. It's always a pleasure.
And Andy, always.
Thank you.
And it was informative as hell. I'm learning shit from you guys.
We want you to do all our engineering, Tony. I've had it with engineering.
As soon as Sony calls,
let me know what you need done.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
It could definitely go to another level, Tony. We're not at that level, that high level, you know.
Well, we're getting
Thank
there.
you so
Yeah,
much for tuning in and talking IT with Glenn and Tony and Noiser and Silly Noiser. You better to make sure to go ahead, look up these artists on the Band Lab, and you will not be disappointed.
Thanks, everybody.
Angie,
Catch
I
you
like
next
to
time.
think of them as the Noisers.
The Noisers.
Who are the Noisers?
Oh yeah.
True.
Thank
you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Angie.
You're
Thanks, guys.
welcome,
Great
and you all
time.
have a great
Our pleasure.
night.
Oh, thank
Always
you.
appreciated. Have a great night.
All right.
care.
Good night,
See you
everyone.
guys.